Hi all, I have an absolutely fascinating game to show you today. So this is Leela against Stockfish in the much awaited TSEC Cup final. So this final was denied to us last time round because Stockfish got knocked out by Houdini rather unexpectedly in the Catalan kind of weakness that Stockfish has, where it accepts that gambit on d4. But this year, Leela and Stockfish meet up in the final, and this is a key game here. So 30 minutes with a 5-second increment. D4, the opening book given to both. It's in the Trompovsky territory. So British Grandmaster Julian Hodgson was a Trompovsky exponent revitalizing this opening. We have here knight c3 here. Bishop takes f6 is more common. This has been the choice, for example, of Magnus Carlsen against Ivanchuk in Berlin 2015, which did actually result in Magnus losing to Ivanchuk in that game. So just to quickly show that game. Basically, Ivanchuk, I think this is a rapid time control, I believe. And Ivanchuk got this good tactical shot in, and I think he was kind of celebrating after the game. There's a YouTube video clip of him kind of celebrating after. So anyway, crushing there, Queen G1. So that was that disastrous game of Magnus Carlsen with Bishop takes f6, but it's still the most popular move. So here we see actually knight c3, which is a favourite of Richard Report, and there was a game against addendum in Weekend Z 2017, which this follows for a bit now. C takes D, Queen takes D4, Knight C6, Queen H4, D6. E6 is more common, and that was in the game, Report against addendum. So White castled queenside, and let's see for a little bit. Eventually, anyway, Richard Report lost that in 39 moves, and this is the final position. So anyway, so Queen H4, we see D6 in this game from Stockfish. White castles queenside, Queen A5. This is the end of the book given, and Leela chooses now E4. This has been seen before. Bishop E6, and now Knight F3, letting the A2 pawn go potentially. Stockfish plays H6. This isn't a real threat, of course, because that's pinned at the moment. But it does mean the knight's restricted. Otherwise, there'll be queen takes G5 if the knight wasn't F3. On bishop takes A2, White can actually just play bishop B5 here, and this is actually going to be very good for White, where White has a lot of pressure there, and eventually, C6 is going to drop at White's leisure. So that'll be much better for White. So there's no point taking on A2 here, in case you were wondering. Also, by the way, on check, that's harmless because of King D2. This position, White's winning that knight on F6. Big advantage. So H6, Bishop B5 here. A6, Bishop takes C6. So White volunteers the light square bishop. Bishop D2, we see Rook B8. Stockfish is not afraid of any discovered attack on the queen at the moment. E5, D takes, Rook H, E1. So an interesting temporary pawn sack. So White without the bishop pair, but look at Black's fragmented pawn structure here. Knight D7, we see Knight A4, so hitting the queen, and this queen supports that knight. So asking the queen to move. In fact, Stockfish refuses to move and counterattacks White's queen. Okay, so interesting position here. Here we see, instead of that, say Queen C7, Knight takes, this position would actually be quite favourable. That's a nasty pin, and White ends up being better there. Also in this line, if Rook B5, then Bishop C3, and then F4 again, and White's better here in this variation. So so in case you're wondering why Queen C7 might be plausible, it seems to be worse for Black. So G5, we have bishop takes, so the queen's come off, and black gets that g-file pressure. Potentially knight takes, rook g8, g3, we see h5, bishop c7, and the rook can't leave that first rank, otherwise just checkmate there. So the rook goes, in fact, check first, and then the rook goes to c8, bishop b6, bishop g4, rook d e1 hitting e7. That's moved. Bishop e3, trying to get rid of the bishop pair, black's bishop pair. Black actually wasn't interested in a move like bishop g7 perhaps. White can torture the a6 pawn or something with rook a5. So we see actually the exchange of dark square bishops, and now rook g5, f3, hg. Very interesting. If the bishop had moved back, then g takes, and this is very nice for white, especially that's a beautiful knight on the dark square. It's very comfortable hitting a6. So in fact, Stockfish went in for a remarkable continuation. H takes g, offering the bishop. Now rook takes g4, hitting the knight, so getting another pawn potentially now. We see b3. So clearly if rook takes g3, this endgame just favours black. So white has to protect the knight, and we have seemingly very dangerous pawn now. We see rook h3, rook g2. You might think, what about rook g1? Well, white actually has rook c1 protecting the rook with the king. So h1, we're just going to take that pawn. So if there, then knight c5, and white's in the driving seat. So rook g2, knight c5 here, rook d8, rook c1. The rooks both come to the second rank. King b2, e5. And you might get the idea that black surely has got great pawn mobility here. White's knight can't surely handle these pawns. They're too dangerous. Two rooks on the 7th. Black's position looks rather optimal. White takes the a6 pawn, so creating a passed a pawn. Is this really a serious thing, given that black has got two connected passed pawns now? Knight c5, f4, knight e4, the rook moves. Knight c3, the rook moves again, and now rook takes h5, king f7, rook h3, king e6, the king's coming up the board. Now f3, check, check, rook h3, and now Stockfish plays what you might think is a wonderful combination. Rook takes c2. So we see after rook takes that actually black's going to queen here. That's usually a good thing, queening, right? The two pieces cannot stop one of the pawns queening. So rook takes h2, the queen is queened. Rook e2, we see queen f4. Rook e4, it's still a very difficult position for both sides. White's got this outside passed a pawn. The rook and knight are controlling basically the pawn structure because it's fragmented. It's quite a neat outpost on e4. So it's difficult for black to make any progress. And you're going to have to excuse me, I'm going to be fast forwarding quite a lot of this very soon. So king f8 here. You might think, well, why king f8? Here's an example, an alternative, queen f5. It doesn't really do black any favours, this kind of thing. It's just going to be a perpetual check draw there, one would think. So anyway, so king f8, just letting the pawn go instead of holding on to the pawn. It is taken, check, queen c4, rook e4. So white's not losing any pawns, and in fact the a pawn is increasing in apparent progress for a moment. And then white is actually using that c5 square, first with a rook, but a knight's going to be switched there pretty soon. We're going to see changing of the outpost on c5 pretty shortly, after some high level shuffling. The knight's going to go to c5. Round about here, off the check, knight c5. So has white made any progress? Not really. There's a lot of checks here. We see now check, 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 check. Lots of checks indeed. And so we're moving past the 100 move mark now. All these checks. So I think a lot of people thought it might just be a draw here. Aren't we just surely getting a draw? And in fact, there's a neat little tactic. If black wanted to seal the draw in this position, instead of queen a1, black can draw with queen takes b4 check, it seems, because king takes is actually stalemate. But Stockfish didn't play that. We have actually queen a1 check. By the way, here, yeah, just to examine this, if king a2, queen takes, again, this is drawish. So anyway, queen a1 check, and we get a load more checks. And the knight, yeah, the pawn is allowed to queen, and there's a load more checks. And you might think this is perpetual check, surely. So lots of checks, and the expectation here was of a draw, really, because of all the perpetual check scenario. It seems can't be shaked, or can it? So we go on to move 150 here, king e5, check. And now we move 154, and here we see at move 154 what seems to be a remarkably intriguing tactical disaster move. It seems here if black wants to draw, queen g4 check secures perpetual check territory. For example, knight g4, check, check. It's perpetual check territory still. There's no progress, surely, for white here. It's just perpetual checks. The queen's on a8. As long as the queen keeps checking, basically. But we see, for some reason, Stockfish having some sort of breakdown here with queen g6 check. And there are various quotations I'm going to have to share with you, because I have no real definite reason. I think it's under pending investigation why this was played. Because it does run the checks out. The checks after knight g7 are not that easy. The knight is kind of useful here, stopping queen e6 check. And after queen g4, basically, it's white's turn now. We have a check respite here, and white uses that with queen a5 check, and now king f8. And what does white do? White plays queen g6, and we have this massive centralizing queen move all of a sudden. Queen e5. Yeah, this is just very, very powerful square for the queen, as you can see. I put in all these arrows. Very, very nice square for the queen. Queen e5. We have queen h6. So the queen actually holds the knight. That's one perk at least. So king e8, check. King f7, queen h4. And now queen d6, check. King e8, queen f3. Knight e6, and the knight's now massively centralized as well. Check. King d7, check. Queen e7, and white's going to get in another check, you might think, once the king moves. Queen h3, king d6, yes, white gets in another check. King b6, queen c7 check, and the game ended here. Both engines thought black was totally busted. As an example, if the king goes to b5, then check, queen c5 check, check, and this pawn, the b5 pawn, is going to queen, basically, if we follow this through as an example. it's going to be queening. So some sort of tactical disaster happened in this game, particularly at this moment where Queen G6 was played. So a remarkable Stockfish blunder in this position. And I've got a few quotations there. I thought it would be interesting to collect some quotations. So this first one is from Manimond. He says, I'm pretty sure it's not a computer hardware malfunction, but a software malfunction. A hash collision, I guess, which is a rare event, but always a pending threat with the current algorithmic design of hash tables. To make this efficient and fast, it is not checked if two positions led to the same hash value. In that rare event, two different positions will be regarded as having the same valuation. So that was one theory put forward for this Queen G6. Nix1103 writes, there will certainly be an analysis in the fish cooking Google group. So that's somewhere to check out if you want the pending investigation about this tactical disaster. Joseph Viruses wrote, repeat after me, don't criticise Leela's endgame dreaming ways. Andrew Paliframan, burritos have been eliminated as a cause. Aluri42 writes, LC01 knew immediately it was a potential win. 2 played almost perfectly 7-piece ending. It was not immediately lost because of the 50 move counter, but Stockfish at move 157 Queen G6 blundered 10 plies by playing a non-optimal move and lost, basically. Oki Roxin Fob had this comment, the end of the world is coming, Leela, Skynet is coming, will be terminated, run for your lives, ! Multiple times. But then added, I was just kidding, Skynet will not come so soon. Aluri42 also added, Kingscrusher, they are perfect. They are perfect, but this is the endgame table bases. But after they are probed, then result is stored in a hash table, and that is not perfect anymore. So no flaw in the table bases, only how the values are stored. Later, Gideon425 writes, the hashing occurs in Stockfish and causes a position to be misevaluated. Laurie also added, Stockfish has to probe the right position. Note this is a 7-piece position and Stockfish at TSEC has only access to 6-piece table bases. That is a big difference on this particular flavour, J. Horfos flavour of Leela. There's a 7-piece table base, and that's a big deal. You might not think it's only one more piece from a 6-piece. It's actually tons and tons of storage required generally for an extra piece for your table base. So a fascinating technical glitch seemed to happen here. Even my own local Stockfish, it doesn't have table bases, will play Queen G4 check, just drawing. Basically, it's going to calculate string of checks, and it just gives 0 basically for the string of checks with the right check here. So maybe the lesson for us all is make sure you've got a continual supply of checks. Oh dear. Okay. If you enjoyed this game video, then please click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, to become a member at chessbowl.net. Play against other YouTubers. You can also test yourself on the variations covered in this game and other game videos from the Improve menu puzzle books option, which has a link to the annotated game. Comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, shares, subscribes with the notification bell, really appreciated. And before I say thanks very much, yes, I'm going to break the suspense. Leela drew the next game after a mammoth amount of shuffling around from a drawn position, and so has won the TSAT Cup now a second time. Because the TSAT Cup is relatively new, in fact, Leela has the top number of wins of the TSAT Cup for TSAT Cup history. So historically great achievement, and yeah, very interesting times. So we have now the TSEC Chess final coming up, the SUFI, as they say, SUFI I. And that will be watched with great interest. So yeah, come to TSEC, donate to TSEC, let them get the best hardware. I'm a subscriber there, I recommend it. It's good banter in the chat, as you can see from all the comments made. Great banter there. Okay, thanks very much. Puzzle book addendum. If you go to chessbowl.net, the improved menu puzzle books, you'll see I've just added one for this game, a few puzzles from it only. So we'll try clear or mates, clear advantage or checkmates. So here I think white just plays king d2 and then takes on f6, no problem. King's holding c3. Here white play for a clear advantage. What was the idea here? I think it might be knight takes e5 for queen g3, that nasty pin, and then f4. Yeah, that was a tactic, interesting tactic behind the scenes. Here I think bishop c3, putting pressure on that pinned piece, f4, taking on g6. Yeah, this is going to be better for white. Here, if black does that weakness to the last move, we can pounce with rook d8 checkmate. Here, white can just take on h4 and then play this to protect the pawns, be mean, and knight c5. Here, I think black just takes here and allows this check. There's no harm to this check and putting the king there for a big advantage. And this last one, I think here we just play rook c1, protecting the rook. That's the trick here. And then we play knight c5, so black's not gained anything there. So if you want to check out that puzzle book and other puzzle books recently from the improved menu puzzle books, there's quite a few being added every day. So Grank was added yesterday. Other games there. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much.